I was asked to give you the mammal perspective of springs. Mammals use springs for forage and water. That's not unusual. I'm going to spend my time telling you a little bit about Florida manatee, and I know most of you know all kinds of things about the Florida manatee. But I'm going to fill you in on a few things that are going on. The Florida manatee, you can go right to the next slide, has a little special need of our Florida springs, more so than the other mammals that I'm not going to talk about. As you know, the Florida manatee is at the northern extent of its winter range here in Florida. And so when it gets cold, manatees flock to springs. A little bit the opposite of us. When it's hot, we flock to them. Manatees go in the wintertime. And while many manatees don't go there, a lot do. And the future looks interesting for us. As a manager, it's very interesting to me. Once a year, usually we fly an aerial survey. We call it the synoptic survey. One day, we go out, we count as many manatees as we can throughout the state. The best time to count is the winter time because we know where they'll be, somewhere where they can stay warm. And when we do that, what we see is on the Florida West Coast, typically about a little over half are either at springs or other warm water sites that aren't dependent on an industrial plant, a power plant primarily. And on the East Coast, we see about 25% at springs or other warm water sites that aren't dependent on industry. That's, about 63% of our manatees are dependent on industrial warm water in the wintertime. There's been some good things about that. It's probably helped the population recover because those industrial sites are warm, they're very dependable, or have been in the past. But as a manager, I need to look at the future as well. Managed population is doing better. Let's talk about reclassification, maybe the threatened. That's all good news. As a manager, we're supposed to worry. That's good. Next slide, please. So hopefully the animation works here. If it doesn't, I'll explain. About 1999, 2000, we started to see the blinking out of some of those power plants in North Florida and Central Florida, a few. Most of those plants were small, they were old, but it gave us a little microcosm of what's happening. At those plants, we're talking about tens of animals, not hundreds of animals. And those tens of animals had interesting responses to those power plants going away in warm water sites. Some of them suffered, some of them died, some of them had second choices that they managed with. But it was interesting on a very small scale. Next slide, please. As a worrier, I worry about those 6 remaining plants, the FPL plants. There's 4 of them on the East Coast, Fort Myers, and then the Tico Big Bend Station. Because there, we're talking about not tens of manatees, we're talking about hundreds of manatees at each plant, thousands of manatees in the state, 63% of the population. Next slide. So if those plants go away, we're left with some really big gaps in our warm water network of manatees. And what do we do? How do we deal with that? That's the questions we're asking now. And we put some thought into it. We've had a few years to do that. And the good news is that, relatively speaking, several of those power plants on the East Coast repowered in the last 5 years or so. The good news about that is it buys me, 10 or 20 years, actually the next person is up to retire by then. Time to plan, what are we going to do? How are we going to get those animals from those power plants somewhere else without losing large numbers of them and being back in endangered classification rather than threat classification? Next slide, please. So we start thinking about broad strategies. And these are the kinds of things. And there's a lot that goes into these, but these are broad things that we're thinking and actually doing. And you'll hear one of my colleagues a little bit later on showing you some of the examples of what we're doing. Future warm water. It's going to have to depend a lot on spring systems and a lot of what we call passive warm water sites. And I'm not going to get into the details about what those are, but there's a variety of them. It doesn't require any industry, doesn't require anyone to run them. Manatees have found them, they use them, and they use them fairly successfully. We need to protect and conserve what we have. Those spring systems, we're not going to get any more, so we need to protect what we can. We need to restore those natural conditions, and we need to make them accessible to animals. Many of them aren't anymore. We have historical knowledge of areas they've used that they don't use anymore. Some of those springs have disappeared completely, so that's important. Restoring spring habitats. we're not looking to benefit a single species by changing a natural system. But a lot of these natural systems have changed because of us. And if we can return them back to a more natural state, historically speaking, then maybe manatees can use them again as well. Submerged aquatic vegetation is important, and disturbance. You saw some of the slides of disturbance throughout the day today, where we can get us, in the wintertime we can have 50 boats or 1,000 people a spring, and that's a disturbance for manatees. There's going to be a number of different things we're going to have to do. And then for the long term, what we want is to develop a network of sustainable warm water that has minimal dependence on technology, because technology costs money, it's not as dependable as we'd like it to be, and it takes people to run it. And we've found with power plants, in the long term, that's not good. And then we have to maintain and identify what the replacement is. And when we do that, it needs to be sufficient carrying capacity-wise that'll keep the animal off the endangered species list. So long term, that's a pretty big charge to do, but we've started. Next slide, please. So we look at it as regional networks. And these are the 4 networks. They're winter populations. Manatees aren't home to just South Florida, East Florida. They can cover the whole coast. We even have some that go back and forth on either coast. But in the wintertime, they're pretty distinct in where they like to be. St. Johns River, the Atlantic coast, Southwest Florida, Northwest Florida. And so those regional networks are really important to the animals now. And we need to start building them, think about what they're going to look like 20, 30, 40 years from now. That's our start. We're filling in gaps. Some of those sites are primary that can hold 100 or 200 or 300 animals. Some of them are only going to be able to hold 10 or 15 animals. But that's what we're looking at now. There won't be another power plant that we can supplant with some other way that 1,000 animals can sit in. It's just not feasible. So we're looking to take all these little sites and build a carrying capacity similar to what we have today. And that's right now 6,000 animals. And 3,000 of those are power plants. That's the space that's fine. And so that's our charge, and that's what we're doing.